The significance of this agreement is less the quantum. It's relatively a modest sum, about $1 billion, which in the world of defence doesn't get you very far. But really the symbolism is what's interesting here. This is probably, despite its relatively modest scale, the largest defence deal that Australia has ever inked with an Asian nation. And this has been an uncomfortable reality for a while, despite all of Australia's talk about its growing defence relationships with the region. When it comes to us actually buying the stuff we need to fight wars and to defend Australia, we've typically turned to the Americans and to the Europeans. So the fact that Australia has now signed a reasonably substantial contract with a South Korean company for these howitzers, self-propelled artillery, is something of a significant moment. And of course the next question is, will there be more? There is a much bigger contract that's up for grabs at the moment, a $30 billion contract for infantry fighting vehicles. Now, a German company was rumoured to be, or was broadly expected to be in the lead for that contract, but now the company that has been awarded the howitzer agreement, Hanwha, is also rumoured to be going quite strongly for this larger contract. And I'm not sure if you could quite describe it as a front runner, but the Prime Minister Scott Morrison said today that it was in a strong position, and the fact that a South Korean company is even in the mix does show that there's a real shift in the thinking here in Australia, at least to some extent, and there's a willingness now in Canberra to look quite hard at Asian defence contractors and companies when these big contracts come up for grabs.
And both Australia and South Korea have faced economic coercion from China. Did the two leaders discuss how they're dealing with Beijing?
Yes, they certainly did, although the details of that discussion, unsurprisingly, are being very closely guarded, and neither the Prime Minister nor Moon Jae-in went into any detail when they were asked about this element of their discussions here in Canberra. There's no doubt that there is a level of commonality. Both Australia and Korean leaders refer to each other as like-minded partners. They're both liberal democracies, of course, with both countries that value freedom of movement in the region, but there's also an awfully large amount of space in some ways between the approach that Australia has taken towards China and the approach that South Korea has taken. Now, of course, a good example of that is the Beijing Winter Olympics. Australia has announced a diplomatic boycott of that event. South Korea, however, as the President made clear today here in Canberra, isn't contemplating doing the same thing. Then there's also the question of the security alliances that Australia is striking, whether that's the AUKUS agreement for defence technology sharing with Australia, the UK and America, or of course, not strictly in the security space, but significant nonetheless, the Quad agreement with Australia, India, the US and Japan. Now, South Korea has been very much on the outer of these agreements. There's no real sign that it's knocking to join. Nonetheless, President Moon Jae-in, when asked about these agreements today, did signal that, broadly speaking, South Korea was comfortable with the trajectory that Australia was taking with these agreements. And the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, was quick to emphasise that he appreciated that support and said that the decision to join with the US and the UK to build these nuclear submarines under AUKUS actually made, in his view, Australia a stronger partner for countries in the region like South Korea. Let's take a listen to Prime Minister Morrison speaking earlier today.
As President Moon and I discussed today, both of these partnerships are about ensuring that Australia can be a stronger partner for so many others. And so the capabilities that we're able to acquire through the AUKUS partnership means that we can be an even better partner with Korea in our bilateral relationship.
And Stephen, how about the flashpoint over Taiwan? Do you get this sense that both countries are on the same page?
No, I think when it comes to Taiwan, there's quite a bit of clear air between Australia and South Korea. Of course, this is a much more immediate question and pressing question for South Korea because it's in the neighbourhood. Australia has a little bit more distance, which does inform some of the calculations here. But President Moon was asked about Peter Dutton's comment not that long ago that it was inconceivable that Australia wouldn't join with the United States in defending Taiwan if there was a conflict there. And when the President was asked about this, he made it very clear that South Korea wasn't going to be issuing any sort of statements of that nature, simply saying that he wanted to preserve peace across the Taiwan Strait and emphasising the importance of international dialogue. So you do get the sense that Australia is quite a bit more forward-leaning on these issues than South Korea is. But of course, the stakes here are very very high, and South Korea is keenly conscious that it's highly exposed on multiple fronts to Beijing. It doesn't want to do anything, even though, of course, President Moon Jae-in has made this decision to come to Australia at a sensitive time. It doesn't want to do anything to unnecessarily inflame ties with Beijing.